Joining us now is Dr. Calvin Knowlton. He's the chairman and founder and CEO of Tabula Rasa. Great to have you here, Dr. Knowlton. So introduce us first to your audience. If they aren't already familiar, the stock had a monster couple of years after IPO in 2016. Walk us through where you sit in this digital revolution within healthcare.
Certainly. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, we are involved in simply medication safety. And what we mean by that is that if you look at, this is an invisible problem people don't talk about, but if you look at adverse drug events, the preponderance of it is immense. It's the word disease. It's now the third leading cause of death in the United States after heart disease and cancer. And it's usually due to multi-drug combinations, particularly taken by older people, that clash in various ways that causes these adverse drug events that lead to falls and ER visits and hospitalizations and death. So that's kind of what we work on.
So different prescriptions, understanding how to apply them, how to administer drugs. Does the revenue come from a model of consumer buying, or do you sell it to the pharmacies and the healthcare providers?
Yes, mostly our focus is to pharmacists that are using a system of a drug interaction system that's about 50 years old. It's been upgraded with new drugs, but the guts of it, the core of it, is about 50 years old. It just looks at one drug to one drug and says the literature tells you that if you take these two drugs, this may happen. And what we do is we do a multi-drug simultaneous analysis using a lot of deep science, and we tell the practitioner, here's what you can look for with this regimen taken this time of day. Here's some of the problems you're going to encounter. So we work with pharmacists. They may be in health plans, they may be in the VA, they may be in chain pharmacies or community pharmacies or hospitals. So that's kind of our target area.
Now, the latest at the end of last year, a deal with CVS pharmacies providing medication therapy management. How embedded are you right now with the existing suite of these pharmacies? Because a lot of these have changed their models. They're combining with other companies. How has that affected the relationships at all?
Not at all, really. I mean, we're still contracting with a number of health plans, a number of chain, regional and national chain pharmacies, for example. The thing is that they all want their pharmacists to have Velcro to the patient, particularly in light of the fact that Amazon Pharmacy is coming around in the next couple of years, and they want this Velcro. And one of the best ways to get Velcro is by doing clinical information, giving clinical information to the patient and the prescribers on the best combination and way to take these medicines. So wherever you find a pharmacist, that's where we focus.
We've spoken with some of the other sort of digitally focused healthcare, not providers, but products and services. There's a lot going on as we see technology implemented into healthcare. What are the priorities, and sort of how do you want to interact with the consumer as well? Will there be apps that they follow this on? Are there different ways to find a service for the end user as well?
Yes, we take all the science that we use on identifying the multi-drug risk, and we logarithmically move it into a 0 to 50 scale.
Okay.
0, no risk, 50, high risk. And that will be available on our app that we're coming out with, MyMedWise it's called. And the consumer will be able to see that with this combination taken at this time of day, here's where their risk is for a medication problem, an adverse drug event. And so we are working on that right now, actually. So it eventually will be, it will be very patient-centric. However, you still need a learned intermediary to help you through it, because there's so many permutations with 20,000 drugs. There's so many ways that, so you need to have a pharmacist that really understands. We call them a certified MedWise pharmacist, and we've got about 500 or 600 certified so far, that can help the patient.
Now, is the value proposition then for the pharmacies to save from, let me just ask it this then. I mean, what is the value proposition? Why do the pharmacies want to pay you for the service? Are they saving money by, not having to issue different drugs because they're not, the efficacy is low? Is it for the healthcare providers who want to save costs by those who are coming into the hospitals because they're mixing these things up? Where does the value get created in the healthcare chain?
Yeah, what we find is a reduction in falls, ER visits, hospitalizations, a very significant reduction in hospitalizations. So we're looking at risk healthcare plans, for example. The healthcare plans that are at financial risk for the whole, the amount of money for the patient's going to be paying in the healthcare or expending in healthcare. And the pharmacists are able, using this system and working with the prescribers, to reduce that outflow very significantly.
I see. Is there risk in politics in your mind? Do you worry about how the healthcare system will change, or is that value creation going to find its way through whatever sort of market exists?
Yeah, the latter is true, particularly the way the baby boomers are growing in the aging group. And when you look at some of the data, in 1994, 14% of elderly people took 5 or more prescription drugs. In 2014, 20 years later, it was 42%, 300% increase in those taking 5 or more prescription drugs, plus their over-the-counter drugs. And all these drugs have to be metabolized. They all have a possibility of interfering with one another, either time of day or just clashing with the way they're metabolized. So it's going to grow. And it's not just here. It's a pandemic. It's all over the world. We've done some work overseas, and they have the same incidence and prevalence of preventable adverse drug events due to multi-drug interactions.
It sounds like if you have a service and a product that relies around data and usage of drug consumption in pharmacies, then there's probably some integration into the opioid situation as we continue to have, people propose ways to, solve this issue. Is there a way that Tabula Rasa can provide value in that, on that front?
Absolutely, and it doesn't have to do with limiting the day's supply. It has to do with looking at the science on how most of the opioids are called prodrugs. They have to, one gene activates them, another gene gets rid of them, and the gene that activates, like OxyContin, oxymorphone, for example, is 2D6. And there's other drugs that have a stronger affinity to the 2D6 gene. So if somebody's taking Benadryl at the same time, it's not going to, that has a strong affinity to 2D6. The OxyContin is not going to get activated, the oxymorphone, it's not going to work. So they keep increasing the dose and increasing the dose. And what happens is, a lot of these drugs do this. They grab the 2D6. What happens is then the person decides they're going to stop taking that interfering drug. All of a sudden they're at a high dose. They've got all this free 2D6 within 24 hours, and they get into a terrible overdose. So that's what we focus on, the science underlying how the drugs are activated and inactivated and what they do with each other.
Yeah. Last question, real quick, Dr. Knowlton. For the company overall, when you started, you were doing 60-70% top-line revenue growth. The last quarter, I saw that for earnings, you cut some of that guidance a little bit. Can you give us an idea over 2020 what type of top-line growth number you expect?
Yeah, we're going to still see the same type of top-line growth. We had a couple of very large acquisitions in the past 18 months, and we spent an awful lot of time and money getting them assimilated properly. So it did cut down our bottom line a bit, but we're going to be back there. Okay.
Dr. Calvin Knowlton, really interesting stuff. We'll definitely continue to follow the stock. Very exciting work.
Thank you.
Dr. Knowlton is the chairman and founder, CEO as well at Tabula Rasa HealthCare.